Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of What Do You Think? My name is Bill Morse, and I'm moderating this. Although you, the viewers, are the callers, you give body to this program, and that the format here is call in. At any time you have a question or feedback to what is said, or perhaps a new idea, I welcome you to call us via the Zoom telephone number, the 929 number, and then you punch in the meeting identification code and then also the passcode, which is the last number on your screen. So anytime, you're welcome to join us. This is a call-in program. I apologize for missing the last 2 weeks. Continuity is very important, especially when you're starting new programming. So again, I appreciate your patience and thank you for tuning in once again. We have a lot to talk about. I wanted to just share briefly a story that has to do with the importance of a grassroots effort. And this story came to me through the National File Online, which is an online newspaper. National File, F-I-L-E, and also from radio station KNST. KNST, which is a radio station, AM talk radio station in Tucson, Arizona. The story that came to my attention this morning comes out of Vail, Arizona, which is, I believe, a suburb of Tucson. And it involved a school board meeting whereby a couple of hundred parents showed up to voice their concern over the school board's decision to continue lockdown program or lockdown protocol at the district schools, including distancing, of course, the constant use of face masks, and also a fair amount of remote learning. I believe they had a hybrid system in use whereby there was some in-person instruction and also some remote learning taking place. And the parents were upset because they were concerned about the effects of wearing masks all day in school. And so they asked the board to change their opinion or to change their mind and to alter the restrictions that had been in place over the last year. The board refused to, and sheriffs or deputies were called into the meeting to usher the parents out. The parents refused to leave the meeting, and so the school board members resigned. I don't know how many there were. Normally there are between 6 to 12 school board members at an average district, but the school board members resigned. Using what is called the open meeting law, the parents then decided to actually hold new elections among themselves for school board member replacements. And they used Robert's Rules of Law. The deputies, I believe, stood by. I don't think they were going to forcibly evict a couple of hundred parents from the school meeting location where the board had its meetings. So, using Robert's Rules of Law, following a procedure in a typical school board meeting, they went through nominations, they elected a new board, and then after the new board was elected, the first motion that carried and was approved was the discontinuation of certain elements of the COVID restrictions, that being the use of masks by students. So that's an unusual example, but it is nonetheless an example of a grassroots movement coming forth from a need, and especially when those elected and school board members are elected to represent parents or the community at large, when they refuse to listen to concerns of parents. So anyway, I just wanted to share that news item with you. I have been in touch with the communications person for Senator Leahy. He's been busy. Perhaps you saw the president, Joseph Biden, address both houses of Congress and Senate. Yesterday it was televised. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, was seated on the left, and Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, was seated at the right behind the president while he gave his speech. So I'm sure our senator was there, Patrick Leahy, along with Senator Bernie Sanders and our Congressman, Mr. Welch. So I'm intending on hearing from the senator or from the senator's office soon. We have a number of questions. One of them, 4 questions that I did submit briefly to recap the nature of House bills, why House bills seem to go on for thousands of pages, are diluted with additional spending items, and why, by nature, House bills do not address one single issue and are written such so that a 4th or a 5th grader could follow what is in the bill and not have to leaf through dozens, if not hundreds, of pages. So that was one point. The second point was the senator does have a history of supporting antitrust legislation. And a caller wanted an update on what is going on in an attempt to break up the monopoly now being held by big tech, big media, and also big retail. Retail, I'm thinking Amazon, which is now branched off beyond its original business plan, and big media, Time Warner, other corporations that own boatloads of TV and radio stations. I'm also going to include publicly funded radio and TV, National Public Radio and National Public Television, that are also owned by and influenced now by advertising from private companies. And also big tech. We've talked about this, or it's been talked about before. Google, YouTube, Facebook, actually becoming powerful enough to channel what users have access to and what they don't have access to, insofar as information is concerned, or censoring what is said in the name of clamping down on hate speech. So those 2 questions, and then I had a third question about the role of national public service for 1 year by young people not necessarily public service in the military, but hospitals, classrooms, other venues whereby a community service is performed. Could be a senior center in response or in exchange. Thank you. In exchange for credits in college or some type of incentive, but a national required or obligatory, is the word, no, type of national service, kind of like a draft, but a draft where you choose what area of public service you are interested in. And I think my personal opinion, and this was my question, that I think would re-engage many people in how government works, how the community works, where needs are, and just connecting with people that they normally would not connect with. And I believe we have a caller with another question for Senator Leahy that I would add to these, the three that I've already mentioned. And so, Kurt, I thank you for calling back, and I believe you have a question that you would like Senator Leahy to address.
All right. Actually, I have a couple of questions, but one of the ones that had come to mind in light of the president's address recently was obviously the Republicans have already responded back with great negativity on all of these plans that the president has proposed. Is there any particular one of them that the senator plans to either champion or try to help persuade the other party to possibly bring along?
Actually,
the other question I had, go ahead.
If we could hold on to that one just right now,
Sure.
Kurt. I know
Sure.
in anybody who's interested in what the senator has been recently doing in Washington can go onto his website, just Google or DuckDuckGo, and you won't be traced that way, DuckDuckGo. Google will trace you, DuckDuckGo will not, so there's a plug. Reason to go for DuckDuckGo right now. Well, if you do a search on DuckDuckGo, you'll Senator Patrick Leahy, and it will come up his website. And he lists, and it's posted every few days, what he's been doing. One of his accomplishments that he speaks of is the American Rescue Plan. American Rescue Plan, whereby I think $1.3 trillion was approved. I believe it was strictly Democrat Party, that was not bipartisan. If I'm wrong, then I find out I'm wrong, I will come back and correct myself and apologize. But I believe the American Rescue Plan received just Democratic support, which was enough to carry it. The American Rescue Plan was signed into law by President Biden. $1.3 trillion, and the reason that the Senator Leahy signed on to it was that there were benefits for Vermonters. He's a big proponent, and so am I, of farm-to-school meal programs, whereby lunches or breakfasts, the food or the produce comes from locally sourced farmers and growers. So that's good. The programs are there. The food, nutritional food is there. It's locally produced, so that's good. That gives us a circle, strengthens a sense of community, and strengthens the connectivity between what we eat and drink and where it comes from. We see the cows, we see the cattle, we see the corn, we see the soybeans, whatever it is. We taste this in our food, the milk, etc. Also, I believe the program, besides farmers, besides growers and farmers, it also There were several projects. I'm blanking on this, so I'm going to look at this very quickly. There was one other thing that was positive for Vermonters besides the farm to school. Come on. I actually looked at it this morning, but you would never know it. Anyway, it'll occur to me later, and then I will share it. But there were a couple of things that were good for Vermonters. COVID relief in the way of checks. I believe that was it. So, Kurt, does that help answer that part of your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
If I may ask another question,
Please.
You started to touch upon education early on in your program. One of the things I had understood at one time, the senator had voted against school choice, and considering the state of education presently in the United States, particularly the disparaging differences between interurban education versus, remote education in smaller towns, I understand that he was against the parents' right to choose other schools that might better benefit their child. I wonder if we could ask him that question as to why did he take that position? Because I think now more than ever, particularly ever since COVID, things have even gotten more complex, and the differences in education has gotten even more severe.
That's a very good question. For those who are a little unfamiliar, because school choice I don't think is as big an issue in Vermont as it is in other states with medium to large sized cities. I can just give the example of a parent or parents that have a child in, let's say, New Haven, Connecticut, or Philadelphia, even Boston, and they're in a district, they live in a district where the schools are not performing well. Unfortunately, we have a lot of districts in more needy neighborhoods in our cities. Not so much in Vermont. Vermont is kind of like a rural, although we do have cities, it's kind of a case apart. But the disparity between good and bad schools, I don't want to say bad, let's say underperforming. It's a fairer way to put it. Demonizing isn't going to do anything. But without school choice, parents are stuck in that district of poor performing schools. You think, well, if the school is badly performing, why isn't there pressure from parents to improve instruction, improve funding, or change the principal or change the teachers that are not effectively teaching their children? Well, you have union protection, which can go both ways. It can help a teacher that's struggling but is a good teacher. It also protects teachers that really have chosen the wrong profession. You have political appointees in the way of principals, and I say politics, even in a small city like where I grew up, you had politics in the selection of who would be principal. So not always getting the best person for the job. Also, in needy communities, you have many single-family homes. Single-parent homes, sorry. Single-family homes is fine. Single-parent homes, whereby the parent, the mother or the father, is overwhelmed or is given up. And so that parent does not go to school, does not meet the teacher, does not ask the child how he or she is doing, doesn't care. So there's one potential point of support that's not there for the school. You also have some language difficulties. In Philadelphia, especially, you have many, many different ethnic groups that English is their second language. And there's certain intimidation in going to a school that's in a foreign country, which is what U.S. is in their eyes and in their experience is a foreign country with foreign ways. So there's a lot of reasons why schools are not teaching, and they're allowed to remain open. Parents, in my opinion, and this is where I would like to get feedback from Senator Leahy, parents have the right, the constitutional right, to a quality education. If they cannot get it for a variety of reasons in their home district, they should have the choice of sending their child to another district where the schools are doing better, where there is more parent support, better funding, and just the child will have a better chance of learning. So, Kurt, is that what you were saying in pretty much in a big nutshell?
Very much in a nutshell, absolutely.
Okay. All right, very good. Was there anything else?
Well, if I can ask another question.
Sure.
One of the things that over time, I mean, I'm 68 years old and have seen a lot of changes in government. One of the things that really amazes me is how special interest groups and particularly companies, large companies, can send in lobbyists, and so many of our legislators are funded by these companies. And just to, as an impression from an innocent citizen, I question how this got so large over the time. I mean, in the 60s, lobbyists didn't exist. How suddenly now it seems like the government is run by big business?
It is.
I don't know what the senator could do about that. I mean, it's quite possible that his campaigns are funded by some of these businesses as well, and it seems to be commonplace. But it just seems that, a normal citizen can get an impression that our legislators are in the pockets of big business.
There's a very strong argument in favor of there's a very strong argument that would agree with what you've just said. In 2009, I believe, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled, I think it was a 5-4 decision, so it wasn't a slam bang, but they ruled that corporations had the right, just as any other private citizen, to contribute to a political campaign, and that there was no ceiling. So in other words, when you see a candidate or an incumbent, someone who's trying to get reelected, stand at a podium, and you look at the mirror behind that candidate and you see company logos, be it Google, Amazon, I've even seen it for CSX, the railroad. Whoever has an interest in seeing that candidate win the election to better represent their needs in government, they can basically just write a check, a very large 6-figure check, whatever. And of course, their needs are going to be met quicker than you or I, who might donate $25. So the argument was, you're buying government. Yes, you are. You're buying the senator's attention. You're buying the congressman's attention. Where I grew up, I was in a council and Board of Ed. Not so much Board of Ed, but council. You would get contributions from developers that were looking at property and needed a little help. Well, that's buying the attention of and cooperation of that public official. So I think that 2009 Supreme Court decision definitely greased the wheels for corruption. I'll say it, corruption, because you're buying someone's attention. All right. It's corruption, but I guess it's also a form of capitalism. But it's definitely, it's not democratic. And also, a lot of people I know in the military, you get out of the military 20 years, you go into the defense industry because you're familiar with the type of aircraft, the type of ship or weapon system from your 20 years or whatever in the military. And now you can work for the defense industry, the military industrial complex, and keep the ball rolling. So that also is a form of buying someone's support once you've gotten yourself, once that person has gotten into office. There was a fella who was on city council. He wasn't on city council with me, but he was city council and mayor where I grew up. He had a very good saying. He said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Meaning, if you don't get involved with politics, if you just kind of sit on the sideline, you're going to be on the menu. And I think many people, part of the issue with our country is many people have stayed on the sidelines, and whereby they dismiss politics as a dirty business. Well, as long as it remains a dirty business, we're going to get effed. So, was there anything you wanted to add, Kurt?
No, you pretty much said it all. But I mean, it is to me, it just seems like influence peddling, and it's just I don't know how anyone could end this. You know, particularly as you say, with a Supreme Court decision to defend it. But it really is an American. I just feel very disappointed. You know, I look at our country having the highest pharmaceutical rates. I've had friends who actually drive across the border a few hundred miles into Canada to get affordable cancer medicine. I mean, it's just, I can't help but think that this lobbyist situation, as it is today, has enabled all of that.
Well, there were anti-lobbyist laws on the books at one time. They were removed or watered down. Again, it goes back in my mind to this bill writing protocol, whereby you write a bill that only, or laws that only lawyers can understand. Loopholes are in the laws, intentionally or unintentionally. And so you have lobbyist people whose only job is to figure a way of getting around those, using those loopholes to get around the spirit of the law and still conduct business as usual.
Right.
All right, so, Kurt, I'm going to tie it up right now. I appreciate the call. I'm hoping that we have some feedback from Senator Leahy next week. And if anybody has, no, if thank you for the call and the great questions. And if anybody else has questions, please tune in next week at 5:45, next Thursday at 5:45, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Love to hear your questions on what is going to be an ongoing topic for a while, and that is the nature of how we do government. So, Kurt, I'm going to say goodnight. We'll talk again soon. And I'm going to wish everyone a pleasant evening. And remember, any change starts with you. It starts on the grassroots level. Whether you're a parent going to a board meeting or you're sharing your ideas with like-minded people who are citizens and not just consumers in our culture. So I wish you all good night and have a pleasant weekend. Bye-bye.